Preacher ready to preach singing that song, and appreciate so much those songs that were led. We're going to continue our lesson we started last week, Face to Face with Jesus. And if you remember from last week, we talked about Jesus coming face to face with the disciples, especially Thomas. You remember Thomas in his statement to the rest of the disciples when they were trying to go back to the area of Judea where they had just been trying to stone Jesus. Remember what Thomas said? You think of him as the doubter, the one who doubted, who wanted to see the evidence. But in this situation, he said, let's go with him so that we may die with him. What an awesome statement that was. And then we looked at Jesus coming face to face with Martha, verses 17 through 27. Where she said, Lord, if you'd only been here, he wouldn't have died. And then he said, if you believe, he'll rise again. She said, I know in the resurrection, he'll rise again from the dead. But then, she eventually said, I believed in a generic way he's going to rise from the dead. But then she made the great statement, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God. It became a personalized faith with her. It wasn't some just generic, I believe, just like everybody else believes. It was a personal, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God. And we talked about how that was for us. Many people have the attitude, yeah, church is a good thing. Christ is a good thing. But when I make it personal, I believe that Jesus Christ died to purchase the church, then it's going to be the main thing to me. Jesus Christ died to save me. It's a personal thing. It's not just going to be a place in my life. It's going to be the place in my life. This morning, we're going to see Jesus coming face to face with Mary and the Jews in verses 28 through 37. And then finally, what we always think of when we think of John chapter 11 is he's going to come face to face with Lazarus. But let's look at Mary and the Jews first. And let's begin in John chapter 11. And we're going to start reading in verse 28. John chapter 11, verse 28. And when she had said these things, talking about Martha, she went her way and secretly called Mary her sister, saying, secretly, trying to keep it on the down low, the teacher has come and is calling for you. As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, she is going to the tomb to weep there. Then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's what Martha said. Verse 33, this time, instead of replying to Martha like he did, watch what he does instead. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, where have you laid him? Then they said to him, Lord, come and see. Verse 35, Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. And some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Well, any private meeting that Martha was hoping that Jesus and Mary could have together was lost when those mourners saw Mary get up. Saw her going, they think, well, she must be going to the tomb. Let's go so that we can weep with her. But instead of going to the tomb, she comes to meet with Jesus. And so consequently, not only is Mary meeting Jesus face to face, but also are the Jews that are with her. And verse 32, when she meets him face to face, she falls at her feet and says the same thing that Martha did. Oh, if you had only been here, my brother would not have died. Now watch verse 33. When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and says that he was troubled. It's an interesting word, is the word groaned. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Greek name. There it is. You pronounce it and tell me what it is. But I know the meaning of it. In extra biblical Greek, it used to be associated with the snorting of horses. When you apply it to humans, it suggests outrage, anger, or emotional indignation. Let me give you, for instance, Mark chapter 9, verse 30. And Jesus sternly warned them. There it is. Mark 1, verse 43. And he strictly warned them. Mark 14:5. And they criticized her sharply. There's that word used in that context. It is something that is applied to suggest anger, outrage, or emotional indignation. So, when Jesus saw that, the first thing he did before he weeps, and this is important to us to understand what it was when he wept, he, first of all, groaned in the spirit. You think about that with the snorting of just displeased. We'll put that mildly. Some suggest that Jesus is so moved with their grief and is consequently angry with the sin and the sickness and death in this fallen world that wreaks so much havoc and greatness and so much sorrow that this is why he was groaning in the spirit, and this is what instigated his tears. Others have said, well, his anger is directed at the unbelief itself. These people were weeping as people who have no hope. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. Here's the difficulty. When we understand that word and then we see the tears, and if you're looking for someone to say, this is exactly why Jesus was weeping, this is what he was thinking, well, you're going to be disappointed. But let me just try to give you some of the things that were going on as we see this, when we understand that word. The reason we have so much struggle in understanding, I believe, this passage is because when you read that word groaning in the spirit and then comes the tears, is we have a difficulty because with most of us, to be angry with someone is inconsistent with being loving toward someone. If I'm angry at you, I don't want to be empathetic with you. If I'm angry at you, I don't want what's best for you. I want what's worse for you because there's some anger there. With Jesus and the Father, however, this completely breaks down. This is the Jesus who could utter the terrible woes upon Jerusalem. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, and then to Jerusalem itself, and then later on, weep over the city. You see? Woe unto you, woe unto you, woe unto, and then weeping over you. The world is at enmity with God, yet, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. The world is an enmity with them. What does God do? He gives his Son for them. And so it's not surprising, to me at least, that when Jesus approached the tomb, he felt indignation and sympathy all at once. Same as with sin and death. The same unbelief that prompted the outrage also generated his grief. Look at verses 36 and 37. Let's look at this a little bit deeper, and I think this helps explains it. Let's look at the passages around Jesus wept, because we know what that means. He cried. He wept. That's easy to understand. But look what else was going on that prompted these tears. Verse 36. Then the Jews said, see how he loved them. Now watch verse 37. And some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? You see, there's something more than going on than just a bunch of those people who are accompanying Mary. That's all lovey-dovey situation where everybody's heart's in the same place. Everybody's thinking the same thing. Everybody is adoring our Savior. And as they're looking at him weeping, they're saying, oh, how you must have loved him. Some did say that. Some of the Jews said, see how he loved them. Look at verse 45. You see, you read just a few verses later and watch this. Then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. So some of the Jews, and I believe it was the Jews that were saying, oh, see how he loved them. Some of them believed in him. But look at verse 37. And some of them said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Now, in one way, they're right. If you can heal a man who had been blind from birth, surely you can keep a man from dying. But there's more to it. Contrast verse 37. That attitude, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? Look at now at verse 46. So some of them believed, but look at verse 46. But some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things that Jesus did. And upon their report, what did the Pharisees do? They gathered a council. How can we destroy him? And now not only destroy him, but how can we destroy also Lazarus, the one he raised from the dead? I know we're getting ahead of the story, but this is what follows this miracle. Some believed, some gathered a council, and they sought the more even to kill him. Jesus can read the hearts of men. He knew that among that group of Jews that were accompanying Mary, some of them would believe, and some of them, it would harden their heart even more. Could that possibly be part of the reason that he groaned in his spirit and he wept? He wept. As we look at these Jews, and this is the thing that, as we've been reading the Bible through the New Testament so much, we're not reading this to look at those Jews that believed and hold them up and say, oh, how wonderful they are. That is a great thing to do. And we're not looking at those Jews that were reported to the Pharisees and think how horrible they are, and let's all pack on them and let's just sick them and let them just tell them what evil people that we are. If we're reading the New Testament like that, we're doing something wrong. Our question is this: which group am I in? Which group am I in? You see, some of these Jews, think about this. This is what just boggles my mind as I read this. They knew that Jesus had healed the man that had been blind from birth. But rather than saying, oh, if he can do that, of course he can raise Lazarus from the dead. We know what's coming. And you know what? Mary and Martha were in the same boat. So I'm not saying that they were lacking faith in that part. But here's the point I'm trying to make. No matter how many miracles Jesus would perform, it would always be the next miracle that was going to win their souls in their mind. You've done this, you've done this, you've done this, you've done this. But as soon as you do this, Lord, then I'll believe and I'll do something about it. Their faith only took them as far as the next miracle that Jesus did. You see that over and over and over again. When he fed the 5,000, they wanted to make him a king. Why? So we can keep on getting miracles. It's the next miracle that you do that's going to make me a believer, that's going to make me strong, that's going to make me say what Martha said: you are the Christ, the Son of God, and I'm here to honor you. You are my Lord. It's that next miracle that you do is when I'm going to really start getting serious about my relationship with you. And so I ask myself, is this how I treat the Savior? I want you to think about two things. And we're examining ourselves. We're not thinking about these Jews right now. I'm asking Mark Reynolds, what about you? You notice oftentimes that there are a group of Christians who will follow Christ so far as everything continues to go right and easy in their life. Oh, I'm feeling great. Things are great. Things are great. Things are great. The first time there's a little bump in the road, they miss a Sunday. They miss another Sunday. They miss another Sunday. They miss another Sunday. And before long, we're wondering, whatever happened to old brother or sister so-and-so? Well, they were serving until the next good thing that Jesus did for them. But as soon as that didn't happen, they're gone. Sometimes it works that way, but then also you'll have the opposite. That when everything is going well in people's life, I don't need him. Why do I need him? Look how well everything's going in my life. But as soon as there's a bump in the road, The same thing that drives some people away drives other people to him. Now I realize I do need him. Things are not going well in my life. Things are unraveling. I need him. And so they flock to the Savior until things start smoothing out again. And then what happens? You see, it's the same mentality. These Jews that were here, they would only follow the Savior up to that next miracle. It was always the one that was out there that was going to win their heart. Jesus is angry with this type of faith. And it's part of the reason that he weeps over those whose hearts he'll know he'll never truly have. So they came face to face with Jesus, and it told them something about themselves. We come face to face with Jesus, and we ask ourselves when we compare ourselves with him, is this telling something about myself? The faith of these Jews was only as strong as the next miracle, which causes a quiet outrage again in this very next verse. And then we come face to face with Lazarus. Look at verse 38. Then Jesus, again groaning in himself, that's that same word, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, "Lord, by this time there is a stench, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God?" Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me." He's already been praying about this. "And I know that you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me." Now, when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come forth." And he who died came out, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to him, "Loose him and let him go." Man, this is awesome. As Jesus approaches the tomb, he tells them to take away the stone. Remember what we said last week about some Jews who had that belief that the soul would tarry around the body for 3 days, but after they started seeing the discoloration of the face, it would depart. It's been 4 days. What do they know is taking place? He stinketh by now. He's decomposing. There's going to be a stench. There's something we cannot open. The whole reason we put that stone there is to keep that decomposing inside and us on the outside. We don't think that we should take away the stone. And notice again who speaks up. It's Martha, the one who had just confessed her faith in him. And yet she has to speak up, and she's doing this. And what does Jesus? "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you would see the glory of God?" So what does she do? Oh yeah, you're right. You know, these people like Martha, who we give a bad name sometimes too because of what happened there in the house, we're in Bethany, when she went and complained to Jesus, "Martha, Martha, you're so busy. Mary has chosen the good thing. She chose in there." And so we make that stick. Aren't you glad, or don't you pray that you're not remembered for the worst day in your life, but for the good things that you do in life? Aren't you glad that God doesn't look at you like sometimes we humans look at one another? Something we did 30 years ago, we still want to talk about it. Oh yeah, he's a good guy. But 30 years ago, this is what he did. Sometimes we do the same thing to Martha. Martha says, "He's been dead 4 days. By now there's a stench." Martha, what did I tell you? Okay, you're right. Guys, roll away the stone. Listen to him. She comes through in the end. But I'm getting ready to show you the glory of God. I'm getting ready to help you all see. Those disciples said, if he sleeps, he does well. He's going to help them see. I know that in the resurrection he will rise again. I'm getting ready to show you who makes that possible. I'm going to show you the light that I was talking about. And so then Jesus prays, showing that he's already been talking to God about this. But he wants his hearers to come into the relationship that he has with his Father. And could you imagine as Jesus is praying this? Father, I know you've already heard me, but I'm saying this so that these people will understand. He prays to God. And so they pay attention. And then after the prayer, verse 43, when he has said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. He cried it with a loud voice. Question. Could Lazarus have heard him if he had whispered? Yeah. He's crying with a loud voice. There's other people there. Lazarus, come forth. And I know we've all heard the saying, and I said I'm not going to say it today when I get to this part, but I'm going to break my promise to myself and say it. And I think of Marshall Keeble every time I do say this. You know why he called Lazarus by name? If he hadn't, everybody in the cemetery would have gotten up. If you can raise one, you can raise a zillion. Dead people, can't you? If you can raise one, you can raise them all. He calls him by name. Lazarus, come forth. And Lazarus listens. Verse 44, it says, he who died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. I want you to see something here. Lazarus did not raise himself from the dead. It was Jesus who did it. And when Jesus called Lazarus to him, don't miss this, Lazarus had no choice but to obey that call. Jesus raised him from the dead. I want, for the last part of the lesson, to think about this scene. And I know this is everybody's favorite miracle because it's so awesome. Somebody being dead for 4 days, dead and buried, and then gets up and walks out of the grave. But I want to compare Lazarus' resurrection, lest we get too carried away with it, to a resurrection that was even better than Lazarus coming forth from the dead. Let's look at these points. As we compare this, number one, the stone had to be rolled away for Lazarus so that he could come out. He couldn't even get out of his own burial clothes. He's not going to be able to roll that stone away. The stone had to be rolled away so that Lazarus could come out. The stone was rolled away in Jesus' resurrection, not so Jesus could get out, but what? That his disciples could get in. Isn't that right? Remember later on in John chapter 20, the doors were closed. Jesus was in the room. How did he get there? He could go anywhere he wanted, walls or no walls. He could get there. And so the stone on Jesus' tomb didn't have to be rolled away so he could get out, but so that his disciples could get in. Lazarus had to be unbound. Jesus' burial garments were folded neatly and put in place. If you can be raised from the dead by your own power, you can get out of the grave clothes, can't you? Lazarus was in a physical body. As we said, Jesus could enter into closed rooms because his was a spiritual body. And though his resurrected body bore the marks of his 5 wounds and was capable of eating and being touched, Jesus was raised with the power of endless life. What about Lazarus? Lazarus was going to die again. Jesus would never die again. Lazarus heard the voice of Jesus, and he had to respond. All will hear his voice when the final resurrection occurs. And you'll have to respond. Those who hear Jesus' shout on the last day will participate not in a resurrection like Lazarus participated in, but in the resurrection of Christ, never to die again. I want us to think about that and give you some time to cogitate on that a little bit. When you die, the Bible teaches you either go to the bosom of Abraham, paradise. Jesus said to the thief on the cross, "Today thou shalt be with me in paradise." Or you go into torments, where the rich man of Luke 16 ended up. And it was so bad, remember, he begged Abraham, send Lazarus to just dip his finger in water and touch my tongue. That's all I asked for. And if not that, send Lazarus back to teach my brothers. And he said, they had Moses and the prophets. They won't believe Moses and the prophets. They won't believe though one be risen from the dead. So you'll know as soon as you die, you'll know your fate. You'll know where you'll be for eternity. You'll already know because you'll either start celebrating or start suffering. Then someone will say, well, then why in the world is the resurrection day and the judgment day such an important part if we're already going to know what's going to be happening to us and the suffering has already started? Because here it is. Paul wrote to the Corinthians, we will all appear before the judgment seat of Christ. Here's what's going to happen. You'll know. But then Jesus will call your name individually. You won't have any say in the matter. You'll have to approach the one who died for you. Look him in the eye and give an account of what you did. And you'll have no choice but to go. And that reason that's keeping you from being what you ought to be, like that Jew that's in that one section, you do one more thing for me, then I'll believe. Then he does that. He said, no, you do one more thing, and then I'll believe. And he does that. He said, no, you do one more thing. And it's always just out there. One of these days I'm going to be the Christian I ought to be. And you've never been. That day has never come. Whatever reason that is, whatever excuse it is, he'll call you from torments, you'll meet him at the judgment seat, and you'll tell him your reason. And you'll realize what a dumb excuse it was. Mark, did you not know all that I did for you? Yes, Lord, I knew. Then why, Mark? Why didn't you obey? And then you'll say why. And whatever reason it is, it's not going to cut it. It won't be good enough. And you'll see that light. You'll desire it. And it'll say, go away. And you'll never see it again. God help me to have the faith of Thomas. Whatever it takes, Lord, I will be faithful to you. If I have to die with you, I'll do it. God, help me to have a personalized faith like Martha. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into this world to understand the devastation of my sin and the love of my God. God, help me to be ready for the resurrection day, when Jesus will call me by my name. Mark, come forth. God, help me. God, help you be ready for that day. Please come while together we stand and sing.